Hey friends, let me start with something wild. Yesterday, the Wall Street Journal dropped an exclusive report claiming that after a phone call with Xi Jinping, President Trump advised Japan not to provoke Beijing over Taiwan. And immediately, Chinese social media treated this like a geopolitical rotary ring, blasting the story everywhere, celebrating as if Trump has become an honorary CCP Central Committee member. But there's one tiny problem. This entire story collapses the moment you apply basic logic. And Japan has already publicly denied the reporting. And let's break this down. According to the Wall Street Journal, Xi Jinping was furious during his 30-minute phone call with Trump, and half of the call was Xi giving a history lecture about Taiwan. And after hanging up, Trump supposedly told Japan to tone it down on Taiwan to avoid upsetting China. And China instantly amplified this story online. And this was portrayed as a diplomatic victory. See, Trump sides with China. America tells Japan to behave. And it was the exact narrative Beijing wanted. Japan, however, was not amused. Hours later, Japan's cabinet secretary Shinobu Moto made a public statement that the Wall Street Journal claimed that President Trump told Japan not to provoke China is not true. Okay? Not uncertain, not no comment, not, we won't discuss private conversations. Just not true. And Japan even contacted the Wall Street Journal directly to question this report. And the Wall Street Journal quietly updated its story afterward. And already the foundation of this entire narrative starts crumbling. Now, why does this story make zero strategic sense? Let's forget Japan for a second and just ask the obvious question. Why would the US tell Japan not to provoke China when the US itself is provoking China on Taiwan more than anyone? Under both Trump and Biden, Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. The US Congress passed the Taiwan Assurance Implementation Act. The US repeatedly stated it would defend Taiwan and sold arms to Taiwan. The US Navy ships conduct constant Taiwan Strait transits. And Trump himself, pushed many pro-Taiwan policies. So think about the absurdity. The country most boldly challenging China on Taiwan tells Japan not to challenge China on Taiwan. It's like the US saying, hey, we can poke the dragon, but you can't, because the dragon might get angry. It just sounds ridiculous. And the idea that Washington wants Japan to tone it down ignores basic US grand strategy. See, if China invades Taiwan and the US does nothing, Japan would lose its trust in the US. South Korea would lose trust in the US. The US alliances in East Asia would collapse. Japan and Korea would start building their own nuclear weapons for self-defense. And China gained complete control of East Asia. That would be a geopolitical nightmare for Washington. The one scenario that no American president, Democrat or Republican, can afford. So, in reality, the US actually wants Japan, Australia, Europe, everyone to be vocal about Taiwan because deterrence only works if China sees a united front, a collective defense. And when Japan's Prime Minister Sakaichi says, an emergency in Taiwan represents an emergency in Japan, that is not a provocation Washington wants to suppress. It is a message Washington loves Beijing to see. And here's where the WSJ narrative really implodes. Because after allegedly being told to stay quiet, Japan's prime minister didn't soften at all. She actually went harder. And during a party leader debate on November 26, she said, yes, Japan gave up its claim over Taiwan in the San Francisco Treaty, but Japan never recognized Taiwan as belonging to the PRC. Therefore, PRC's so-called sovereignty over Taiwan has no legal basis. And this statement hit China harder than anything she said all year. And China exploded. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson delivered long, angry rebuttals invoking the Cairo Declaration, the Potsdam Proclamation, Japan's surrender papers, and even the UN Charter. And they accused Japan of violating international law, undermining the four political documents between China and Japan, and challenging the post-war order, right? And needing to correct its mistakes immediately. So if Trump really told Japan to shut up about Taiwan, why did Japan get even louder about it? Because the Wall Street Journal claim never made sense in the first place. And the journal floated another theory behind this whole story. It is that the Trump pressured Japan to help China because he wanted China to buy more US soybeans. And that is just geopolitical comedy because China already has to buy US soybeans under the trade agreement Trump negotiated with China years ago. It's literally already in the contract of Phase 1 trade deal. Trump doesn't need to add Japan for this soybean diplomacy. So why did China promote this narrative so aggressively? Well, simple. Because it made China look like, it could split the US-Japan alliance just by Xi Jinping's one phone call. But reality came crashing down fast. Japan denied the report, and the Wall Street Journal softened its language after complaints. And Trump's Taiwan policy record demonstrates the opposite. And Japan just escalated the statements on Taiwan. So Beijing ended up angrier than before. And the entire thing just blew up in China's face. And this episode really, I think, exposes three important truths. First, China desperately wants to split the US-Japan alliance, okay? But it can't. And second, Japan is becoming bolder, far bolder on Taiwan. Statements that were unthinkable 10 years ago are now mainstream. And third, certainly, the US cannot afford to abandon Taiwan, ever, because doing so would destroy its entire allegiance system in Asia. So when a flashy headline claims that Trump pressured Japan to stay quiet on Taiwan, we should always pause and apply basic strategic logic. The truth usually lies in what the actors actually do, not what mainstream newspapers claim they said. And what Japan is doing right now is clear. They're not backing down. They're not softening on Taiwan. They're not retreating. They're speaking louder than ever, which gives you everything you need to know about the credibility of that Wall Street Journal narrative. And thanks for watching, friends. And I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. More deep dives coming soon, and I'll see you next time.